You don't lack focus. You lack discipline over your attention. This audiobook is not about motivation. Motivation fades. This is about building a system so strong that focus happens whether you feel like it or not. Every distraction stealing your time is training you to be weak. Every moment of controlled attention is training you to be dangerous. Laser focus is not a personality trait. It's a trained response to silence, structure, and deliberate effort. If you master attention, you dominate your work. If you don't, something else will dominate you. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Focus is not a feeling, it's a skill. Focus is not something you wait for. It is something you train. Most people lose before they begin because they're waiting to feel focused. They're waiting for clarity, waiting for motivation, waiting for the right mood. And while they wait, life keeps moving. Opportunities pass. Potential erodes. That's the first lie you must break. Focus is not emotional. Focus is mechanical. It functions the same way strength does in the gym. You don't wake up strong. You build strength through resistance, repetition, and structure. The same rule applies here. You have a choice. You can keep treating focus like a mood that might arrive, or you can treat it like a skill you practice on command. That's the key. High performers don't feel focused. They follow structure even while distracted. They act while the mind resists. They stay inside the system long enough for concentration to appear after obedience, not before it. Focus follows obedience, not emotion. Read that again. Focus follows obedience, not emotion. The brain does not like effort. It never has. Its job is to conserve energy. So when you ask it to concentrate, it pushes back. It creates excuses. It creates discomfort. It creates the illusion that now is not the right time. And most people listen to that voice. They call it intuition. They call it burnout. They call it just not feeling it. But it's none of those things. It's untrained attention. You don't need their permission. Not your brains. Not your emotions. Not your environments. You decide when focus happens. That's the shift. This chapter is about removing emotion from the equation entirely. Because every time you wait to feel focused, you surrender control. And control is everything. Let's be clear about something uncomfortable. If you can only focus when conditions are perfect, you are not focused. You are dependent. Dependence creates weakness. Discipline creates power. That's not about personality. It's about systems. Look at anyone who produces consistently. Writers, engineers, athletes, leaders. They don't rely on inspiration. They rely on rules. Same start time, same workspace, same constraints. They eliminate choice because choice creates friction. You have a choice, but once you choose your system, there are no negotiations. That's the key. Most people try to focus in chaotic environments and then blame themselves when they fail. Random spaces, random schedules, random inputs. Then they wonder why attention collapses. Focus requires constraint. You don't get strong by lifting whatever you want whenever you want. You don't get focused by working wherever you feel like. Constraint sharpens attention. That's the science. The brain adapts to what it is repeatedly forced to do. If you repeatedly sit down at the same time, in the same place, with the same rules, your brain learns something critical. This is focus time. Resistance still shows up, but weaker every day. That's training. You have a choice. You can keep trying harder mentally, or you can make it easier structurally. That's the difference between amateurs and professionals. It's not about willpower. It's about removing friction. Say this clearly. It's not about how you feel. It's about what you do despite how you feel. That's discipline. Focus follows obedience, not emotion. If you wait until you feel ready, you stay average. If you act while uncomfortable, you separate. Now, let's talk about repetition. One focus session doesn't change your life. 10 don't either. What changes you is daily exposure to structured effort. Short sessions, clear boundaries, no drama. 30 to 60 minutes of enforced focus is enough if done every day. The mistake people make is going too big. Too much time, too many goals, too many rules. Focus is built small. Same way trust is built. Same way muscle is built. Quiet repetition. Your brain doesn't need intensity. It needs consistency. That's the key. And here's the part most people avoid. Focus feels boring at first. That boredom is not a problem. That boredom is the signal that stimulation is decreasing. And that's necessary. You've been trained by constant noise, constant scrolling, constant switching. Of course, stillness feels uncomfortable, but discomfort is not danger. You don't need their permission, especially not from discomfort. Sit anyway, work anyway, stay anyway. Every time you do, you teach your brain who's in charge. That's transformation. Now let's address environment. If your environment is loud, chaotic, and tempting, focus will always fail. That's not a character flaw. That's physics. Your surroundings either support discipline or sabotage it. So make focus easier. Same chair, same desk, same device rules. No entertainment, no notifications, no escape. When focus time begins, there is only one option: work or sit in silence. Silence is uncomfortable, so eventually the brain chooses work. That's training. You didn't motivate yourself. You constrained yourself. Big difference. You have a choice. Design your environment intentionally, or let it design you unconsciously. That's the trade. High performers remove decision-making during focus hours. They don't ask, should I work now? They decided that yesterday. You don't negotiate with yourself in the moment. You obey the system. Focus follows obedience, not emotion. And once you understand this, something changes. You stop taking your mind personally. You stop believing every thought. You stop waiting. You act. That's confidence. Not loud confidence. Quiet certainty. And it grows every time you sit down despite resistance. That's the real reward. Focus is not talent. It's training. And the earlier you stop romanticizing feelings, the faster you gain control. You mastered one thing here. You removed emotion from focus. Now we go deeper, because once you stop relying on motivation, you realize how dangerous motivation actually is. You reclaim control. Now let's talk about the biggest illusion holding people back. Chapter 2. Motivation is the enemy of consistency. Motivation feels powerful. That's why it's dangerous. Motivation gives you emotional energy. It gives you excitement. It gives you the illusion of readiness. And because it feels productive, most people build their entire life around chasing it. That's the mistake. Motivation creates dependency. Discipline creates reliability. Reliability creates power. Read that again. Motivation creates dependency. Discipline creates reliability. Reliability creates power. When you rely on motivation, you teach your brain a rule. I only act when I feel good enough to act. And once that rule exists, your brain uses it against you. You have a choice. You can build a system that waits on your emotions, or you can build a system that ignores them. That's the key. Let's be honest. Motivation is inconsistent. It spikes and crashes. It depends on sleep, mood, stress, validation, and novelty. You cannot build a serious life on something that's unstable. Yet most people do. They work hard on good days. They disappear on bad days. Then they wonder why nothing compounds. That's not a mystery. That's math. Consistency beats intensity every time. And consistency is impossible if motivation is in charge. Here's what the brain does when effort is required. It resists. Not because you're weak. Not because you're broken. Because the brain is wired to avoid discomfort. Effort burns energy. Focus burns energy. Structure burns energy, so the brain negotiates. Let's start later. Let's prepare more. Let's wait until we feel ready. Most people mistake that voice for logic. It's not logic, it's avoidance. And if you listen to it long enough, it becomes your lifestyle. You don't wait to focus, you enforce it. That's the shift. Discipline is not emotional. It's procedural. You don't ask how you feel. You check the clock. When the routine says start, you start. No internal debate. No pep talk. No bargaining. You obey. And obedience is uncomfortable at first, but it creates something motivation never will. Trust. When you keep promises to yourself, even small ones, you build internal authority. You stop questioning yourself. You stop seeking permission. You don't need their permission. Not from your mood. Not from your past. Not from a voice that wants comfort. You decide, then you execute. That's power. Let's talk about non-negotiable routines. A routine only works if it's boring and enforced. If it requires excitement, it will fail. Your brain needs predictability to stop resisting. The same start time, the same trigger, the same rules. At first, the brain pushes back hard. Then it adapts. Then it complies. That's training. You don't motivate the brain. You condition it. And conditioning only works when rules are clear. On weekdays at this time, I work. No emotion attached. No exceptions attached. That's it. You have a choice. You can keep redesigning your plan based on how you feel. Or you can keep one simple routine and let results accumulate quietly. That's the difference between people who talk and people who finish. Here's the truth most people don't want to hear. Motivation loves novelty. Discipline loves repetition. And repetition is what builds skill. Motivation makes you start. Discipline makes you continue. But continuation is where transformation happens. Focus deepens after the first 10 minutes of discomfort. Clarity shows up after resistance loses the argument. If you quit early because motivation drops, you never reach depth. You skim life. You skim work. You skim your potential. You don't wait to focus, you enforce it. Say it again. You don't wait to focus, you enforce it. That sentence should make you uncomfortable because it removes excuses. It means focus is your responsibility every day. No one is coming to energize you. No feeling is coming to save you. And that's good news because once you accept that, you stop wasting time waiting. You act. Now, let's address something important. Discipline is not cruelty. It's clarity. People imagine discipline as punishment, as rigidity, as suffering. That's incorrect. True discipline reduces mental friction. When rules are clear, the brain stops arguing. Decision fatigue disappears. Anxiety drops. Confidence rises. Not because you feel amazing, but because you know what happens next. Predictability creates calm. That's the science. Your nervous system relaxes when behavior is structured. Chaos creates stress. Structure creates stability. Motivation thrives in chaos but dies in routine. Discipline thrives in routine and kills chaos. Choose wisely. You have a choice. Keep chasing emotional highs, or build a boring structure that quietly changes your life. That's the trade. Now let's talk about enforcement. Most people intend to be disciplined. Very few enforce consequences. A routine without consequence is a suggestion, and your brain does not respect suggestions. If you skip your focus time, something must be lost. Time, comfort, privilege, nothing dramatic, just enough to signal seriousness. That's conditioning. The brain learns fast when behavior has predictable outcomes. Skip focus, lose something. Complete focus, keep your word. Simple. That's how reliability is built. And reliability compounds. When you show up consistently, even imperfectly, you gain momentum. Momentum reduces resistance. Resistance reduction increases focus. Focus strengthens identity. Identity locks behavior. That's the chain. Motivation never builds identity. Discipline does. Because identity is based on what you repeatedly do, not what you feel. Say this clearly. It's not about motivation. It's about enforcement. That's the key. When focus becomes non-negotiable, the mind adapts. And once the mind adapts, distraction loses its power. You're no longer negotiating. You're executing. Quietly, consistently, effectively. That's real confidence. Not loud, not posted, not announced. Practiced. You don't need their permission. And you don't need motivation. You need rules. You need structure. You need repetition. You mastered something here. You saw motivation for what it is, unreliable. You learned to replace it with discipline. But discipline alone is not enough. Because even disciplined people fail when noise enters the mind. So now we remove the biggest amplifier of distraction. You enforce consistency. Now let's sharpen the mind itself. Chapter 3. Silence builds the mind that can think. Silence makes people uncomfortable. That's why it's powerful. Most people cannot be alone with their thoughts. The moment there is space, they fill it. Music, podcasts, messages, scrolling, constant input, constant noise. They call it stimulation. But what it really is avoidance. Noise fragments attention. Silence concentrates it. And that's the truth most people run from. Silence is not empty. Silence is demanding. Because in silence, there is no distraction to hide behind. No external voice telling you what to think. No emotional anesthesia. Just you, your thoughts, your impulses, your resistance. And that is exactly why silence builds the mind that can think. You have a choice. You can keep consuming noise to avoid discomfort, or you can use silence to sharpen authority. That's the key. Every great decision comes from clarity. Every clear decision requires space. Space only exists in silence. You cannot think deeply while constantly reacting. Reaction is fast. Thinking is slow. Noise trains reaction. Silence trains thought. Say this clearly. Silence is where real thinking begins. Say it again. Silence is where real thinking begins. Most people live in a constant state of input. News, opinions, entertainment, advice, all of it competing for attention. The result is not intelligence. The result is confusion. Too many voices create indecision. Indecision creates hesitation. Hesitation destroys execution. Silence solves this at the root. When you remove noise, your mind has no choice but to organize itself. At first, it resists. You'll feel restless. You'll feel bored. You'll feel uneasy. That discomfort is not a sign something is wrong. It's a sign stimulation is leaving the system. The brain has been trained to expect constant input. When it doesn't get it, it panics. And most people immediately give in. They reach for the phone. They turn something on. They escape. But if you stay long enough, something shifts. Thoughts slow down. Patterns emerge. Priorities become obvious. That's not magic. That's biology. Silence lowers cognitive load. It reduces decision fatigue. It allows working memory to function properly. That's the science. But more importantly, silence builds something deeper. Internal authority. When there's constant noise, your decisions are influenced by external voices. When there's silence, decisions come from within. You don't need their permission when your mind is clear. That's power. High performers are not louder. They are quieter. They schedule silence the way others schedule meetings. Walks without headphones. Work sessions without background noise. Mornings without input. Not forever. Intentionally. Because silence is a tool. You don't live in silence. You train in it. You have a choice. Use silence deliberately, or be trained by noise unconsciously. That's the trade. Now let's talk about patience. Noise shortens attention span. Silence lengthens it. When you're constantly stimulated, the brain demands novelty every few minutes. That's why people struggle to focus. They're not weak. They're overstimulated. Silence reverses this. At first, time feels slow. That's good. Slow time means deeper focus is returning. Patience is not personality. It's a nervous system state. Silence recalibrates that state. And once patience returns, focus follows. Silence is where real thinking begins. Repeat it until you believe it. Now, let's address fear. Many people avoid silence because they're afraid of what comes up. Unfinished thoughts, uncomfortable truths, responsibilities they've been avoiding. Silence exposes gaps between who you are and who you claim to be. That exposure is uncomfortable, but avoidance has a cost. Unexamined thoughts don't disappear. They leak into distraction, anxiety, and indecision. Silence forces integration. You cannot solve what you refuse to face. That's the key. And here's the discipline. Start small. 10 minutes of intentional silence per day. No music, no phone, no input. Just sitting, walking, or working on one task quietly. Your mind will fight. Let it. That fight is the training. Over time, silence stops feeling threatening. It starts feeling grounding. And that's when something important happens. Your decisions become cleaner. Your focus becomes sharper. Your confidence becomes quieter, but stronger. Because it's no longer borrowed. It's earned. Silence builds self-trust. When you can sit with yourself without escape, you stop fearing your own mind. That is mastery. Most people are addicted to noise because noise numbs responsibility. Silence removes that numbing. You see clearly. You act intentionally. That's growth. Say it one last time. Silence is where real thinking begins. And once you experience that clarity, noise loses its grip. But silence alone is not enough. Clarity must be protected, because the world will rush back in the moment you gain it. So now we do what disciplined people do best. We build systems. You learn to focus without emotion. You learn to remove motivation. You learn to use silence. Now we protect that focus permanently. Chapter 4. Build systems that protect your attention. Willpower is unreliable. That's not an insult. That's biology. The human brain does not perform well under constant temptation. Under stress, under fatigue, under emotional pressure, willpower collapses. Every study confirms it. Every real-world example proves it. If your focus depends on strength in the moment, you will lose. That's why serious people don't rely on willpower. They rely on systems. Willpower fails under stress. Systems succeed under pressure. That's the distinction that changes everything. You have a choice. You can keep trying to resist distraction, or you can remove distraction before resistance is required. That's the key. Most people fight temptation after it appears. Notifications buzz. Tabs are open. Distractions are visible. Then they struggle. That struggle is unnecessary. The disciplined don't fight temptation. They design it out. Say this clearly. Remove temptation before you need strength. Say it again. Remove temptation before you need strength. A system is simply a rule that makes the right action easier than the wrong one. Nothing dramatic. Nothing motivational. Just structure. Let's start with time. Focus does not exist in vague windows like sometime today. Vagueness creates avoidance. Focused work requires time blocks, clear start and end points with one purpose. When focus time begins, there is no deciding what to work on. That decision was made earlier. You don't improvise. You execute. That's discipline. Time blocks tell the brain, this is non-negotiable. No debate, no delay, and the brain responds well to certainty. Uncertainty creates anxiety. Structure creates calm. That's the science. A time block is not about productivity. It's about containment. You're not working all day. You're working now. And when the block ends, you stop. That boundary protects focus from burnout. Now environment. Your environment is stronger than your intentions. If distraction is visible, accessible, and convenient, it will win. Every time. So stop pretending you'll just ignore it. That's arrogance. Remove it. Different room, different device, different setup. If your phone is nearby, your brain is split, even if you don't touch it. That's proven. The presence of temptation degrades cognitive performance. So remove it. Another rule. Workspaces are for work. Entertainment spaces are for rest. No overlap. When everything happens everywhere, focus happens nowhere. Your brain needs contextual cues. Same chair, same desk, same setup. Over time, just sitting there activates focus automatically. That's conditioning. Remove temptation before you need strength. Now rules of engagement. Rules are not restrictions. They are clarity. You don't ask, should I check messages? The rule already answered that. During focus blocks, no internet unless required. No messaging, no multitasking. One task only. Rules remove decision-making, and decision-making consumes attention. Every small choice drains energy. Systems conserve it. You don't need their permission to be strict with yourself. That strictness is not cruelty. It's respect. You are respecting your future self. Now let's talk about friction. Increase friction for distraction. Decrease friction for focus. Make distractions annoying. Make focus effortless. Log out of apps. Block sites. Remove shortcuts. Meanwhile, prepare your focus tools in advance. Document open. Notes ready. Task defined. When focus time starts, you don't prepare. You begin. That's the difference between planning and execution. Most people live in preparation to avoid action. Systems force action. You have a choice. You can keep trusting yourself to try harder, or you can stop relying on trust and start relying on structure. That's maturity. Now, let's address failure. You will break the system sometimes. That's not the problem. The problem is emotional reactions to failure. Systems don't require guilt. They require adjustment. If distraction keeps happening, the system is too weak. Strengthen it. Earlier blocks. More barriers. Clearer rules. No self-judgment. Only iteration. That's how professionals think. Emotion clouds analysis. Systems invite analysis. Remove temptation before you need strength. Say until it sticks. Now here's the shift most people never make. They design systems only for good days. But real discipline is designed for bad days. Low energy, low mood, high stress. That's when systems matter most. So plan minimum standards. Even on bad days. Shorter focus blocks. Smaller tasks. Same rules. You don't quit the system. You scale it. This teaches the brain consistency. And consistency builds identity. You start seeing yourself as someone who doesn't disappear. That changes everything. Reliability creates confidence. Not loud confidence. Quiet confidence. The kind that doesn't need validation. You don't need their permission. Your system already decided. Now zoom out. Systems are invisible. No one applauds them. No one notices them. But they compound. Week after week. Month after month. While others rely on bursts of motivation, you rely on inevitability. Work happens because it's scheduled. Focus happens because distraction is gone. That's dominance. Not aggressive. Not flashy. Precise. And here's the final truth of this chapter. If your attention is not protected, it will be taken. By platforms. By noise. By other people's priorities. Attention is the currency of your life. Spend it intentionally. You mastered something here. You stop fighting distraction directly. You started eliminating it structurally. You learned to remove temptation before you need strength. But focus on the outside is not enough. Because even with systems, many people sabotage themselves internally. Thoughts wander. Doubt appears. Mental noise creeps in. So next, we narrow the battlefield even further. One task, one direction, no division. You built the system. Now we simplify the target. Chapter 5, stop multitasking, start dominating one thing. Multitasking looks productive. It feels efficient, and it quietly destroys your ability to think. This is not opinion. It's neuroscience. Every time you switch tasks, your brain pays a cost. Attention fragments. Memory resets. Cognitive energy drains. The more often you switch, the more shallow your thinking becomes. Multitasking does not make you faster. It makes you tired, and tired minds don't produce meaningful work. You have a choice. You can keep doing many things poorly, or you could do one thing with force. That's the key. The brain was never designed to hold multiple complex objectives at once. It can only focus deeply on one demanding task at a time. Everything else is illusion. Context switching trains distraction. Sustained focus trains mastery. Say this clearly. One target, full force. Say it again. One target, full force. High performers understand something most people avoid. Depth beats breadth. 1 hour of undivided attention is more powerful than 3 hours of fractured effort. Because deep focus changes the quality of output, not just the quantity. That's where compounding begins. Shallow work gets done and forgotten. Deep work creates momentum. But deep work requires a ruthless commitment to singularity. You don't half focus. You don't check just one thing. You don't hedge. You commit. One target. Full force. Multitasking is often disguised as responsibility. I need to stay available. I have to juggle multiple things. I can't ignore messages. Most of the time, that's fear. Fear of missing out. Fear of disappointing people. Fear of sitting with one hard problem. So the mind escapes into switching. Switching feels busy, but it avoids difficulty. Difficulty is where growth lives. You don't need their permission to be unavailable for a while. Being unavailable is not neglect. It's investment. Every focus session is a deposit into your future capacity. Now let's talk about fatigue. The exhaustion most people feel is not from working too hard. It's from switching too often. Every switch forces the brain to reload context. Reload goals. Reload rules. That reload is expensive. One task allows flow. Flow conserves energy. That's the paradox. The most focused work often feels easier after the first resistance. Multitasking never reaches that point. It keeps you at the surface, forever starting, never finishing. Completion builds confidence. Fragmentation builds frustration. Choose wisely. You have a choice. Divide your attention and feel busy, or concentrate your attention and feel powerful. That's the difference. Now let's make this practical. Before every focus block, define one task. Not a category, not a vague intention. One specific outcome. Write this section. Solve this problem. Complete this analysis. If you can't define the task, you can't focus on it. Clarity is prerequisite to concentration. Once the task is defined, everything else is irrelevant. No checking, no monitoring, no background activity, just execution. One target, full force. And here's the part most people resist. Thoughts will try to pull you away. Don't forget this. Check that later. Another idea just came up. Those thoughts are not emergencies. They're distractions. Write them down. Return to the task. Externalize distraction instead of following it. That's control. Multitasking also trains impatience. When the brain is used to constant switching, It loses tolerance for depth. Silence feels uncomfortable. Complex problems feel overwhelming. That's not inability. That's conditioning. Singular focus reverses this. At first, depth feels heavy. Then it feels normal. Then it feels addictive. Because progress becomes visible. Visible progress reinforces discipline. That's the loop. One target, full force. Now let's talk about identity. People who multitask see themselves as reactive. People who focus deeply see themselves as builders. That identity shift matters. Builders think in sequences. They plan, execute, review. Reactors respond to what appears. Attention determines identity, and identity determines outcomes. If you want different results, you need a different attentional posture. Not open, not scattered, directed. You don't need to do everything today. You need to do one thing well today, and repeat that tomorrow. That's how expertise is built. Quietly, relentlessly, not by doing more, by doing less better. Most people fear narrowing because it feels limiting. In reality, it's liberating. When you choose one thing, everything else disappears. Mental noise drops. Energy rises. Freedom increases. Because constraint creates clarity. Now let's say the uncomfortable truth. If you're constantly multitasking, you're avoiding commitment. Commitment requires focus. Focus exposes limits. Limits demand effort, but effort creates growth. You have a choice. Stay shallow and protected, or go deep and become capable. That's the trade. One target, full force. Say one last time. One target, full force. You learn something critical here. You learn that attention divided is power lost. You learn that depth compounds faster than speed. But even with focus and systems, distraction still sneaks in. Not from tasks, but from habits. Automatic behaviors. Unconscious impulses. And that's what we confront next. You stopped multitasking. Now, let's eliminate distraction at the root. Chapter 6. Distraction is a learned behavior. Distraction is not your personality. It's your training. No one is born distracted. No one starts life unable to focus. Distraction is installed, slowly, repeatedly, and unintentionally. Every ping, every notification, every impulse rewarded. That's how distraction is built. And anything that's built can be dismantled. You have a choice. You can keep blaming yourself for a problem you were trained into, or you can retrain your attention deliberately. That's the key. Every notification trains instant gratification. It teaches the brain a dangerous rule. Respond now. Think later. Over time, patience erodes. Focus shortens. Depth disappears. This is not a flaw in your character. It's conditioning. Say this clearly. Attention goes where permission is given. Say it again. Attention goes where permission is given. If your phone is allowed to interrupt you, it will. If your apps are allowed to notify you, they will. If impulses are allowed to control behavior, they will. Permission is rarely conscious. That's the problem. Most people never choose distraction. They allow it by default. And defaults rule behavior. Your job is not to fight distraction endlessly. Your job is to revoke permission. Distraction thrives on immediacy. Everything wants an instant response, instant validation, instant feedback. Focus requires the opposite, delay. When you delay response, you strengthen attention. Every time you don't check, don't open, don't react, you weaken the distraction loop. That's training. Now let's talk about weakness, not as judgment, but as cause and effect. Instant gratification weakens self-control. Delayed gratification strengthens it. That applies to food, to money, to attention. When you respond immediately to everything, your brain learns that resistance is unnecessary. When you delay, even briefly, you teach the brain endurance. Endurance creates focus. Attention goes where permission is given. So remove permission. Start with restrictions. Notifications are not neutral. They're commands. So turn them off. Not later. Not selectively. Off by default. If something is truly important, it will wait. Urgency is usually manufactured. You don't need their permission to be unreachable. Now devices. Don't just remove apps. Create zones. Work devices are for work. Personal devices are for leisure. When everything happens on one screen, boundaries collapse. Boundaries protect focus. This is not about balance. It's about clarity. Now let's address internal distraction. Thoughts can hijack attention the same way notifications do. Worry, planning, random ideas. These are mental notifications. They feel urgent, but they are rarely important in the moment. So you do the same thing. Delay. Write it down. Return later. When you give thoughts permission to interrupt, they will. Attention goes where permission is given. Revoke permission. Focus time has rules. No reacting. No chasing. No switching. Only continuation. Distraction will try harder at first. That's extinction behavior. The brain tests whether the old rule still applies. If you hold, the brain adapts. And when it adapts, something shifts. Cravings weaken. Impulse slows. Focus lengthens. That's rewiring. Now here's the trap. Many people think restriction is deprivation. It's not. It's liberation. You're not losing anything valuable. You're gaining control. Most inputs are noise. Silence reveals that quickly. The less you consume, the clearer you think. The clearer you think, the faster you act. Distraction pretends to help. It sabotages. Now, let's make this practical. Create delay windows. Messages are checked at set times. Social input is batched. News is limited or eliminated. Not forever. Intentionally. This trains the brain to stop expecting instant relief. At first, anxiety rises. That's normal. Anxiety is withdrawal from stimulation. Stay with it. The discomfort passes. And when it does, attention feels different. Heavier. More stable. Less jumpy. That's strength. You didn't motivate yourself. You retrained yourself. Now let's say the uncomfortable truth. If you are constantly distracted, it's not because the world is demanding. It's because boundaries are missing. Boundaries are not aggressive. They are necessary. You don't owe constant access. You don't owe instant replies. You don't owe explanations. You owe yourself clarity. Attention goes where permission is given. Say it until it becomes instinct. Now consider identity again. Distracted people feel reactive. Focused people feel deliberate. Deliberate people feel calm, even under pressure. Why? Because they choose when to engage. Choice creates confidence, and that confidence cannot be taken. You have a choice. Allow automatic behaviors to run your day, or slow down enough to decide. That's the difference between living and reacting. Distraction is not a flaw. It's a habit, and habits can be changed. You learn to remove permission. You learn to restrict and delay. But there is one final lever that locks all of this in place. Not systems, not silence, identity. Because behavior sticks when it becomes who you are. You reclaimed attention. Now we change the person who holds it. Chapter 7. Discipline creates identity. Discipline is not punishment. It is transformation. Every action you take shapes who you are, not tomorrow, not next week, but in the long run. Repeated behavior becomes automatic. Repeated obedience becomes character. Repeated focus becomes identity. You have a choice. You can drift. You can react. You can give in to impulses. Or you can deliberately craft yourself through consistent, disciplined action. That's the key. Every person you admire, leaders, creators, athletes, did not become exceptional by wishing. They became exceptional by repeating actions that aligned with a higher standard. They obeyed rules they imposed on themselves. And slowly, inexorably that obedience became who they were. You become what you repeatedly obey. Say it again. You become what you repeatedly obey. Most people believe identity comes first. They say, I want to feel disciplined. I want to be focused. I want to be strong. That's backward. Identity does not create behavior. Behavior creates identity. Do the work, obey the system, follow the rules, and identity emerges naturally. Small repeated victories shape perception, first in your mind, then in your actions, and finally in your life. The person who obeys focus rules, even when tired, even when unmotivated, is no longer someone who tries to focus. There's someone who is focused. You have a choice. You can try, or you can become. Discipline is the lever. Focus is the tool. Identity is the result. Here's the truth few acknowledge. When you obey consistently, even in private, your mind stops arguing. You no longer debate whether to start or stop. You simply execute. Resistance becomes weaker. Confidence becomes stronger. Authority becomes internal. Every time you resist distraction, you are not just completing a task. You are sending a message to your subconscious. I am in charge. Repetition is the secret. Repetition is the force multiplier. One act, repeated daily, reshapes self-image. 1 hour of focus becomes a habit. One habit becomes a trait. One trait becomes identity. You become what you repeatedly obey. Now, let's get practical. Define non-negotiable behaviors for yourself. Start focus sessions at the same time every day. Complete tasks before moving to the next. Remove temptation before you need strength. Each is small, but repeated, they create a self who does not procrastinate, who does not waver, who obeys discipline by default. Identity is strengthened not by intention, but by action. Not by affirmation, but by obedience. Not by thinking about being someone, but by being someone consistently. Most people fail because they attempt shortcuts. They think saying, I am disciplined is enough. It is not. Saying it does nothing. Doing it does everything. Your identity emerges in the silent repetition of doing what must be done. Focus becomes natural. Motivation becomes irrelevant. Resistance loses power. You become what you repeatedly obey. Your environment matters too. Identity is reinforced by cues. The chair you sit in, the desk you work at, the systems you create. Every physical and mental structure supports the person you're becoming. But nothing replaces personal obedience. Nothing automates discipline entirely. You must execute, day after day, week after week, month after month. That is how identity is forged. That is how reactive people become authoritative people. That is how indecision gives way to deliberate action. Now, here's the hard truth. Identity cannot be borrowed. It cannot be wished into existence. It cannot be delegated. It is built in solitude, in discipline, in repeated choice. Every time you obey a rule you set for yourself, you reinforce a version of yourself you respect. Every time you allow distraction, you reinforce the version you despise. This is not philosophical. This is practical. Identity is the aggregate of your repeated actions. You have a choice. Follow whims or follow rules. React or obey. Drift or construct. You become what you repeatedly obey. Say it again. You become what you repeatedly obey. And here's the transition to the next level. You build internal authority. You train focus. You remove distraction. You strengthened identity. Now you must connect mind and body. Discipline alone is not enough if your physical system undermines your mental system. Energy sustains focus. Strength sustains discipline. Health sustains execution. It's time to link your mind with your body. Chapter 8. Deep work requires physical structure. The mind is powerful, but the body is the engine. No amount of willpower, meditation, or strategy can compensate for a fatigued, neglected, or misaligned body. Energy is finite. Focus is fragile. Discipline is conditional on your physical state. A disciplined body sustains a disciplined mind. Say it again. A disciplined body sustains a disciplined mind. Most people treat the body as optional in the pursuit of mental mastery. Sleep is sacrificed. Posture is ignored. Nutrition is random. Movement is skipped. And then they wonder why focus fades after 30 minutes. Why creativity collapses. Why decision-making feels heavy. This is predictable. Your brain consumes energy faster than it produces it. Your body supplies that energy. Neglect the supply, and the system fails. You have a choice. You can ignore physical structure, or you can train it intentionally. That's the key. Let's start with sleep. Sleep is not passive. It is foundational. Deep work requires rest cycles. Memory consolidates. Energy restores. Emotional regulation resets. Decision-making strengthens. Shortchanging sleep is shortchanging focus. Every late night, every early morning without recovery compounds cognitive fatigue. Motivation drops. Willpower collapses. Discipline falters. You don't need their permission to sleep. You need to enforce it. Next, posture and ergonomics. Sitting slouched, craning forward, or constantly adjusting creates subtle tension that drains attention. Muscles engage unnecessarily. Blood flow restricts. Oxygen decreases. Mind fatigues. Small adjustments, chair height, screen angle, alignment, reduce energy leaks. Less wasted energy means more mental bandwidth. That's structural efficiency. A disciplined body sustains a disciplined mind. Movement is the hidden multiplier. Walking, stretching, or light exercise improves circulation, increases neurochemical activity, and primes cognitive clarity. Brief sessions before work blocks or during breaks reset the nervous system. The brain responds to rhythm. Energy rises. Resistance drops. Nutrition is the silent influencer. Skipping meals, relying on sugar, or ignoring hydration spikes energy and crashes it immediately. Focus becomes intermittent. Mood destabilizes. Discipline suffers. Structured nutrition is non-negotiable. Proteins, fats, hydration, and timed meals support cognition. Your body becomes reliable. Your mind becomes reliable. A disciplined body sustains a disciplined mind. Now, integrate these elements into a system. Sleep, consistent bedtime and wake up, prioritizing recovery. Movement, daily rhythm of exercise, stretching, or walks. Posture, workspace adjustments that reduce strain. Nutrition, meals that fuel, not sabotage. Every small habit compounds. Every neglected habit erodes. Energy is the soil where focus grows. If the soil is poor, nothing flourishes. If the soil is strong, even small seeds of focus bloom into mastery. Let's talk about mental fatigue. Physical neglect does not just tire muscles, it tires attention. Discomfort, restlessness, and irritability are your body signaling overload. Ignore these signals and you sacrifice cognitive capacity. Discipline is not punishment. Discipline is alignment. You have a choice. Align your body or struggle to align your mind. High performers enforce physical standards like mental ones. They schedule sleep. They schedule meals. They schedule movement. They make recovery non-negotiable. Not occasionally, every day, because the body forgets. The mind remembers. Consistency creates a system. Even small structural wins multiply focus. Hydrate before work. Walk for 5 minutes every hour. Keep your desk organized for ergonomics and clarity. Sleep 7 to 9 hours consistently. Each action reinforces the next. Energy rises. Attention sharpens. Willpower strengthens. A disciplined body sustains a disciplined mind. Now, here's a truth most people avoid. Deep work is not just a mental challenge. It is a whole body challenge. Sitting all day without support, skipping meals, sacrificing sleep, ignoring movement. This is not discipline. This is self-sabotage. You cannot outthink a depleted system. You cannot outwill a tired body. You cannot focus on autopilot with poor structure. You have a choice. Neglect physical discipline or integrate it into your mental routines. That's the difference between struggling through the day and entering a state of effortless flow. Now let's combine this with what we learned before. Systems protect attention. Single tasking focuses effort. Silence trains the mind. All of these require energy. Energy comes from the body. Neglect the body and all mental strategies collapse. That's why physical structure is not optional. It is foundational. A disciplined body sustains a disciplined mind. Say it again. A disciplined body sustains a disciplined mind. By controlling sleep, movement, posture, and nutrition, you create a vessel capable of deep work. You create a mind that resists distraction. You create energy that endures. High performers combine mental and physical discipline seamlessly. Average performers separate the two and fail. You have a choice. Build a body that supports focus or a body that undermines it. Discipline is consistency in action. Focus is the result. Identity is the outcome. You master mind systems. Now you mastered your body. Next, we move to leverage that physical and mental discipline for ultimate advantage. Chapter 9. Focus is the ultimate competitive advantage. The world is noisy. Attention is fragmented. Distraction is normalized. Most people scroll, consuming endless information, reacting to every ping, living in the shallows. That is life as a consumer. That is life in default mode. Average scrolls. Elite concentrates. Say it again. Average scrolls. Elite concentrates. Focus is the differentiator no one else talks about. It's not skill alone. It's not talent. It's not luck. Focus compounds. Focus multiplies. Focus amplifies everything else you do. You have a choice. You can drift with the crowd, or you can concentrate like a laser. That's the key. Sustained attention allows mastery to happen faster. It allows learning to sink deeper. One concentrated hour produces more results than 3 distracted hours. Decisions become cleaner. Mistakes are fewer. Progress accelerates. Focus is leverage. High performers understand this. They don't try to work harder. They work deeper. While everyone else chases novelty and dopamine, they build expertise quietly, consistently, and relentlessly. Average scrolls. Elite concentrates. Think about it. In every field, attention determines winners. Writers who finish books. Entrepreneurs who build companies. Athletes who dominate the game. Their edge is not more talent. It's more attention devoted without distraction. This is compounding advantage in action. You have a choice. Scatter your mind or concentrate fully. Focus creates speed. Speed creates experience. Experience creates insight. Insight creates authority. Authority creates opportunity. Opportunity compounds over time. Average scrolls. Elite concentrates. Now let's get practical. Protect blocks of undisturbed attention. No exceptions. Remove distractions before they appear. Commit to single tasks. Use silence to deepen concentration. Align your body to sustain energy. Every choice reinforces your competitive edge. Every lapse erodes it. Distraction is the default. Focus is the deviation. and deviation creates advantage. In a distracted world, leaders are not necessarily smarter. They are not luckier. They are not even more talented. They can focus when no one else does. Average scrolls. Elite concentrates. Remember, focus is cumulative. The more consistently you apply it, the greater your advantage. Compounding attention leads to compounding results. The more people react, the more you create. The more people wander, the more you master. This is the ultimate leverage. Sustained attention also sharpens decision-making. Noise clouds judgment. Constant stimulation fragments thinking. Clear, uninterrupted focus allows the mind to analyze, synthesize, and act decisively. Average scrolls. Elite concentrates. Your environment, your systems, your habits, your body, all of them combine to either protect focus or destroy it. You now know how to protect it. You now know how to direct it. You now know how to sustain it. But even with systems, silence, and energy, focus is not automatic. It is enforced. It is cultivated. It is chosen. You have a choice. Follow the crowd, or apply attention relentlessly. Every second counts. Every decision matters. Every hour compounds. Average scrolls. Elite concentrates. You mastered internal systems. You trained your body. You eliminated distraction. You built identity. You created leverage. Now you dominate the one currency that separates winners from the rest: attention. Next, we take all of this and integrate it into lasting results so that focus, discipline, and energy transform not just your hours, but your life.